Alright, it's time to start building your actual website this week. Not fake pages or something you make up out of your imagination using random HTML along the way. This is an actual real site we're going to build from the ground up. And this week, you need to decide what site you're modeling yours after. I'm using Darn Tough's website as my example, and you're welcome to follow along with that. But either way, don't make this up from scratch. Please choose from something real. When I first examine a website like Darn Tough's website, I first examine three sections that are pretty clear: the header, the content of the page or the middle, and the footer section. In this case, the header background stretches all the way across the screen, but the content stays centered at full screen view, and the same with the footer. At a tablet size, you can see that the header and footer appear to be 100% of the width, and at the mobile size, you can see it turns into a much more simplified header with a little drop-down menu. While some of this might seem like responsive design magic, a lot of this is actually controlled in the HTML. Many sites like Darn Tough's are going to have a specific layout that includes containers or wrappers with max width set that are centered on the page inside of full width sections. That way when you shrink the page, it stacks correctly and it flows the right way. All of that's controlled by the layout. Now if I go back to my page and I create a section that has a header, a main, and a footer, and I add simple background colors in there, it sure doesn't act as cool as the Darn Tough websites does. It's kind of simple. In fact, I feel like I don't really have control. I just feel like there's three blocks sitting on the page and I can't really do much with them. And at first, the structure actually works perfectly fine. For simple websites, you really don't need much more than this. But with a setup like this, where we're dependent upon the actual header tag to do all the work, we can't really center anything the right way. We're going to have a trouble isolating the layout different from the content. And you can't scale this later on when we want to include other files or reusable sections. It's going to start acting funny if we depend on the header to do so much. So with main sections of the site like this, and a lot of sections on my site, I'll provide something called a wrapper or a container. These are basically just divs with certain class names that I won't forget that sit directly inside these sections. With those containers or wrappers set, now I can refer to them like classes, and they'll expand to 100% of their container. So I can treat them like the header, or the footer, or the main, or the body, but they aren't. This makes it real easy to give them all, for instance, like a max width, and then a margin of 0, auto, so they'll center. In fact, last week, we did this with two things in our product cards. We did this with the card __ actions. That was a wrapper, and we also put a wrapper around the image as well. Another tip that's really helpful as you develop is to set up some debugging. I created another section at the very bottom of my CSS specifically for this. Now here's the idea. Let's look at the CSS and notice that each statement starts with a .debug. It means that there's a debug class somewhere on my website. And then it just refers to all the sections that we just set up. For instance, the header tag, that's the HTML element, and then site header, that's the class we set with main, site main, footer, and site footer as well. And then I've just given them different background colors. In fact, there's the same color family each, like 2 reds, 2 greens, 2 purples, and one happens to be lighter and one happens to be darker. But what the CSS means is it means find anything that has the class debug, and inside of that, find anything that has the class of site header. So all I have to do to get this to work now is put the class debug somewhere in my HTML. For instance, I could put it as a class of the body. And once that's applied, you'll see all the colors instantly appear. And all I have to do is remove the class to have the colors hide again. Another layout option a lot of developers use is to turn the actual site layout section into a grid with 3 rows: the header, the main, and the footer. Let's say you want the header on the top, but you want the footer to always be at the bottom, even if the main content is not there or empty. So like for instance, you might think of the main section as stretching to be 100% of the height, with the exception of the header and the footer. To make something 100% height in HTML can be done a number of ways. We're going to go over 2 in this video because doing this is complicated depending on what structure you're using. If we weren't using a grid and wanted something to be 100% height, you have to make all of its parents have 100% height as well, starting with the HTML element and the body element. And site main is inside main, which is inside site layout. So all of those have to have height as 100% as well. But that's only if you're not using grid. But in this example, we're using grid and we set one of the rows to be the height of 1 FR. FR is short for fraction, and since the first and third rows are auto, 1 FR here means it'll take up the remaining space the grid has available to it, which is 100%, minus the height of the header and the footer. This forces the grid to stretch, and so we don't need to set 100% on every single parent in this case. Now be careful, because this approach depends on there only being 3 things inside of site layout. If we were to add a fourth or take away the third, it would cause a layout issue. And at that point, we'd have to remember we set that here, and we'd have to come back and add a fourth row or remove the third. That's it for now. Please strongly consider this method and this approach. I cannot warn you enough how troublesome things will get if you veer off too much on your own or start following AI or skip resources and don't pay attention to these concepts. As our site gets more and more complex, it has to be set up a very certain way to keep it predictable, controllable, and error-free.